All right, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to take a different perspective here. We're going to look at the program statistics. So for those who know me, you understand, right? They want me to work with numbers, not words, while we're up here. So what we're going to do is go over a very high-level overview of the key statistics for the program. We're going to be providing some insights. We're going to look at how you can check on the performance of the program. And then we're going to talk for a few minutes about an increased level of interest in supplements. As you've seen throughout the program, we have the key, so we'll be touching many of these points throughout today's presentation. We're going to walk through the key statistical reports that the program publishes. This is for the entire ANDA program. We're going to go through the monthly and quarterly reports. We're going to look at the new fiscal year web posting, which is up and live. We'll talk about the historic GDUFA performance reports. We'll also briefly go through both the competitive generic therapy approvals and the FDA track reports that are out there. Quick note, the majority of the reports that the agency puts out, and certainly the very formal ones, are going to be on the fiscal year. So just sort of keep that in mind as you look through, and certainly there's going to be a difference between the fiscal year and the calendar year numbers for those who like to do a little bit of the comparison. Fiscal year aligns with all of the user fee programs, and it also aligns with some of the other non-user fee commitments that we have as a federal entity. So in going through the monthly and quarterly reports, this is your best source of information about what's happening within the program. It's going to capture actions. That's everybody's favorite, the approvals, tentative approvals, complete response letters. We're going to get into the submissions. What are you guys sending us? What's in the queue? We'll also, on a quarterly basis, update the approval times, and we'll give you a little bit more information about that as we go through this afternoon's presentation. So as you can see, both mean and median time for the approval and for the tentative approval are posted. In fact, the new quarterly reports are up there so you can see what's going on already into Q1 for this FY. When we talk about the approval time, very important to understand when it starts and when it stops. It starts with the accepted application. If we refuse it, it doesn't count. But when it's accepted, that submission date for that acceptance all the way through to the first approval or tentative approval, that's what we're counting. So that means when you look at the total time to approval for an application, it's both times with the FDA and times with the companies. Time responding to information requests, time responding to formal complete response letters where it's totally off our clock. That still does get compressed within the start to finish approval time. So certainly keep that in mind. Here's sort of a diagram outlining what we just spoke about. You can see all the different touch points that happen and how busy the team is sort of in the middle, making sure that everything is running right. And then we'll get into a little bit on these calculations. And the reason why we're going to end it with the first action, whether it's approval or tentative approval, that stops it. Now that means there can be subsequent actions. Tentative approval, great example. We want there to be a subsequent action that comes in to convert that tentative approval into a full approval. There are certain cases after a full approval, company can come in and get a new strength approval. Right? That can be part of the original application, just depending on how it's submitted from the applicant. So we do have split cases. That second approval is still going to go through. None of that's on the clock. It stops with that first one. That's giving you the most meaningful information in terms of, I want to submit an application today, what does the landscape look like? And so as we go through to the next report, you can see a little bit more on the variation between the mean and median. We expect that. Lots of things happening, clusters of applications moving forward, different efforts on industry to clean house. Periodically, we see that. Company starts to move a particular set of applications through. That can all add to the variability. So we expect that deviation. We're looking at quarter to quarter. I want to point out that there's a big difference between the mean, the average, and the median time. We expect that too. What that shows is the level of effort that's going into the new applications that are being submitted under GDUFA 3. Pick those up, move them forward. What we often see with companies is making a decision. Do I work on an old application or do I continue to work on application that was more newly submitted? Are you going to have a choice as a company? I have an IR or DRL that came from the agency. At the same time, I have a complete response on another application. Where do I move my resources? You guys will have to answer those questions, but we can see how that plays out. Companies are focusing their efforts on the newer applications. They're focusing on answering the IRs and DRLs because those have very tight response timeframes, and they're letting some of the older applications languish. And so what we see with that big difference is there's a lot of old applications that industry is still interested in. They're just moving them through at a slower pace. We'll take anything. Right? It's our job to deal with it. You send it in, we'll jump on it. If you're going to be slow, then let us know. And of course, there's some other requirements. If it's going to take you longer than a year to submit your response, let us know, we'll work with you. Here's a depiction of the approval times, and really a set of 3 of these we'll move through very quickly. I want to highlight the impact of the user fee programs, especially want to highlight the impact of putting in goals. As you can see, the goal is now driving the response. We take those goals very seriously. A lot of effort and coordination. Typical government, a lot of just-in-time management, people scrambling around at the end to make sure that application is ready to go and all the pieces are in place. And so you can see, right, our response is coming in right at that goal date. That's a huge win for the program. Now go to a challenge question. New application approval times, are they likely to be longer than prior years, the same as prior years, or faster? Vast majority of the time, they're going to be flowing through much quicker. Obviously, there's exceptions, but if you take advantage of the different tools, the communications, you've already heard about the meetings, these applications can fly through. Now, shift gears a little bit into imminent action, or for those who've been around a little while, it used to be called the imminent approval process. We will miss the original goal date in certain situations where it's in everybody's best interest to move an application into that final tentative approval or approval. If it's an important product, we'll get it done. Right? We'll skip the TA and go right into approval. We'll move products for big forfeiture dates. So we will work with the company, try to give us as much of the goal period as possible, but clearly denote in your cover letter, this has an ELA date of XYZ. We will work with you when it's feasible. The other one is to bring a small issue to approval or tentative approval. We're nearly done. We have finished our assessment on time. We could issue the complete response and meet the goal. But we want you to finish that application. Get it over the threshold, right? Cross the finish line. And so we will send what often comes across as a very late cycle IR or DRL. Oftentimes these have even shorter response times. We're getting near the goal date. You may see a date a couple weeks in advance of the goal date. That's an indication that we may be trying to move your application towards the approval or tentative approval with this imminent action pathway, as opposed to taking that hard time out and pulling together the complete response letter, which of course formally puts it back in your court and starts the whole new queue and all of those things. So provide a thorough response. That's the key. And then if you have any issues with the status of the application, you're not sure, is it moving the right direction or not, talk to the regulatory project manager, and you're going to hear from a couple of them in a few moments. Now, we want to point out a couple things. There has been some criticism of the agency in the past that we're overcounting tentative approvals. We count each time a package goes out the door with a tentative approval. It's as simple as that. This effort actually costs us. It reduces our tentative approval count because we will skip the tentative approval if we're very close to that full approval date. Because we know there's not going to be enough time for you to receive the tentative approval, pull together the final conversion request, and of course get it back to us to do all the double checks. Is the facility still good? Is the DMF good? Is the labeling up to date? All of those kind of things. So if you're real close to getting it, we'll push you through. Talk to the project manager. They can help in these situations. We do that on purpose. Right? That's the win. You guys then get better business certainty. You know when your dates are coming up, you can start to monitor the communications from the team. It increases your chance of being approved on that early lawful approval date. Right? That's the earliest date we're allowed to take the official approval action. And it also takes the worry out of some of the submission timing, which we'll show you some examples of in a couple slides. First, You don't have to worry as much about the weekends. I know in the past I'd receive calls, oh, if I send it in today, the 90-day, it's going to be on the weekend. What do I do? We got the big ELOD date coming up. This takes care of all of that. Send it in. Give us a couple extra days in front of the ELOD, that's fine. Like, you don't have to time it perfectly. You don't have to worry about leap day and other things. We've had companies call us, we're not sure what happens, or there's a holiday, or sometimes there's even unexpected government holidays. Don't worry. Give us as much of that goal date as possible. Err on the side of having that 90 days if it's a minor amendment conversion come a day or two before the ELOD. We will work with you to make sure we hit that date. If it's on a weekend, then obviously we're forced to take action the next business day, right? We'll take that into account. Let me make sure everybody understands that. If there's no ELOD, then we'll work ahead of the weekend. But if there's an ELOD, we can't approve it before. And that's worth repeating, because a lot of times companies will call me on Friday, the ELOD Saturday, we don't have the approval. That's not a failure. That's a sign of success. Our folks have managed the legal landscape and lined that application up for success. Then the goal dates before the ELOD, we talked about that a little bit. That's fine, we'll work with you. We'll use this process to move that application past the goal date, give you the approval on the ELOD. Do this to help you, and we do this to help the patients. They are getting access to this products. That's part of our mission. Safe, effective, high quality generic drugs available to the patients. This helps get that into the hands of the patients. Imminent action statistics. This has caused a little bit of sort of double counting by people. When we show this statistic, 57 approvals, 6 of them are imminent actions. That means out of those 57, those actions occurred. We're not lining up and counting potential things in the future. These are real. We took an action that month that was an imminent action. It was a full approval. We worked past the goal date to get you that full approval. Then we have a fiscal year web posting. This is new from GDUFA 3. Lots of data captured on all different aspects of the application cycles, the originals, the amendments, supplements. A lot of information on meetings, DMFs, statistics on the imminent actions that we just spoke about. Will help you understand how to read the report. And in this case, very simple. We have to do this based on the data that's available at the time. So oftentimes, the preliminary numbers are going to be just that. These are long goal dates. Some of the goal dates are 10 months, not even counting imminent actions or other type of extensions. So certainly an application submitted in one fiscal year can cross over into the next fiscal year. At the end of the first fiscal year, we've got to do a preliminary report. How many did we answer out of all those that came in? How many of those answered were on time? That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to give you data as close to real time as possible. We are not waiting for that last application that's fully baked years from now to work its way across. That's too late for you to figure out what's going on. We do this too to help keep all of the user fee programs lined up and messaging consistently. Now, what we did with the web report is we took sections out of the historic performance report and put them into the web version. We tried to mimic the physical sort of layout as much as possible. The old performance report actually has its origins into a paper format. What we've done here is try to modernize a little bit, go right to the web page, get it out into the public hands sooner. But it's the same information. We've actually just taken sections out of the old performance report, put them on the web so you can see it sooner. We are still going to leave the key information in the formal performance reports, but this helps you. You can see what's going on. You can measure how your company's doing against sort of the aggregate of information that we're capturing on these reports. And very important too for industry, that it helps to focus other government agencies on goals that really matter. We are graded on the official performance report. And so we will put the high-level goals in there. And if we fail those goals, then shame on us. Now, we will work very hard not to. And we have a great track record of meeting the goals. At the same time, there are all sorts of different sub-goals that are out there. Amendments, supplements, amendments to supplements, PFCs, right? sending the facility information in advance with a supplement, without a supplement, with an amendment, without an amendment. By the time you map those out, even though we deal with thousands of applications, there are certain cases where the total pool is less than 10 applications. We miss one, somebody like GAO can come in and audit. So let's take that off the table. We'll focus on the high-level metrics. You will still get to see data on all of those smaller metrics. That's what will be captured in the web report. You'll know whether the amendment with the PFC, did we do 6 out of 7? But you don't want us having to report that to GAO, because what that means is GAO lands, everybody gets wet. We've got to stop doing our work, educate them on what's going on in the program, show them that it's a one-off type of issue where the other hundreds and hundreds of applications are moving through successfully. And in case of supplements, thousands of applications moving through successfully. And it keeps us from having to publicly report the reason we missed. Sometimes it's us, we all know that. Sometimes it's not us, and you don't want us to say it was a facility that had data integrity issues. It was a facility where we're waiting for another federal agency to take an official action on. That doesn't help you, and it doesn't help the larger generic industry. So we think this is a responsible way of still sharing all of the information we had done, but keeping the spotlight on what really matters. Then there's a potential range that's included here. Gives the absolute worst case, absolute best case. If we miss everything else from today or we make everything else, that's what it comes out to. So when we look at this, there's an imminent actions column. That's what really matters. That should be your takeaway from the report. In the commitment letter, it allows us to go through past the goal date, as long as we follow these rules, and get an approval or tentative approval action to you within 60 days. And so if you see a metric, percent completed on time, sort of the gray here in your chart, looks like it's below the 90% commitment. That's because we're turning a majority of these into real approval actions. Go to the green, that little circle at the end, we're at 90%. That's not a failure, that's a success. We could have given you the complete response in the majority of times and gotten credit for the goal, but we will work towards the approval. So challenge question. Imminent actions reported as a subset of the approvals and tentative approvals, additive, or future ones? It's a subset. We're only going to report what actually happened. We're not getting into the prediction game. Does an imminent action count as meeting the goal if it's approved in the second cycle? If it's done prior to the goal date? If it's done within 60 days of the goal date? Or with 61 days or later? 60 days. If we approve it on day 61, you get the approval, we take the miss. So we work very hard to hit that 60 days. Then there's the official performance report. This has been out for many years, so we don't need to walk through that. Competitive generic therapies, if you're looking to see where we need to align together to work to move applications to help, take a look at this. FDA track, it's got a lot of information. What's very unique is it gives you a little bit more insights into how the first cycle performance is looking. Did all this work to compile the application? I sent it to the agency. How are they doing? So what to watch for? Fewer complete response letters. That doesn't mean there's a problem. It means we're using the extensions. It's in the commitment. Industry asks, oh, we're close to the finish line, work it through. We're doing that. Fewer minor amendments being received. It's not that industry is shutting down. It's the fact that we're sending out the extensions. If your refuse to receive rate lower than average, you're doing it right. You're getting fewer complete response letters, you're doing it right. You're approved on the ELOD, we're both doing it right. Your approval time is low, we're both doing it right. We're working together. Then I want to end with some information on supplements. We're seeing more and more interest on these. People asking what type to change. Getting status requests on CDEs at an alarming rate, much more than we have historically. Over 10,000 submitted, right? Divide that number by the number of people we have, a staggering amount, especially if you're a project manager. An application's an application, a supplement has all the same features. Triage, letter prepared, all of those kind of things. You may have to advance. I'm stalled out here. Story of my career, right? All right. Record year for approvals. When you combined everything that's come in on the supplements, right, off the charts, we approved more than we received. And as we talked about more interest from companies, it means they're calling their congressman, they're calling the commissioner. So we're seeing more interest from other people at an alarming rate. I think we're back on here, thank you. Now here's some statistics, right? You can sort of see the trend up and up. And here's a great one. Prior approval supplements. Look at the difference when we took the fee away at the beginning of FY18 and the growth since then. So lots and lots of data is available out there. You can gauge the success of GDUFA 3. You can look at the health of our program. You can look at the health of your company. How are you stacking up with other companies that are out there? And it's a great time to submit the ANDA. You submit it, you take advantage of some of these opportunities we've been talking about at this conference. It will sail through very quickly. And we'll work on the supplements. You don't know how many times I'm called, hey, can you hurry up and approve it because we need to then send in our supplements because we got a bigger launch date coming up later on. Right? We will work with the application, pre-approval, post-approval, whatever it takes to make the product available. So with that, thank you guys very much. And I will turn it over to Andre. He's going to talk a little bit more.